Hi, today I will be explaining the pressure volume loop, and as you can see I have my graph here, and I also have my visual reference here for the ventricles and the atria, but I will be going through all of these points and explaining end diastolic volume and end systolic volume. So at point A, the ventricle has completed a contraction and contains the minimum amount of blood that it will hold during the cycle. It is completely relaxed and its pressure is also at its minimum value. Blood is flowing from the atrium, from the pulmonary veins into the ventricle. As blood flows into the ventricle, as you can see here, the ventricle starts to increase in blood volume. As you can see, there's an increase in blood volume. The last portion, which is the end diastolic volume, is when the left ventricle has the maximum amount of blood it will hold during this cardiac cycle, which is called the end diastolic volume. It can vary on different occasions. So when the heart is beating very, very fast, the ventricle may not have time to fill completely, so this could change in different physiological conditions. When ventricular contraction begins, the mitral valve closes. With both the mitral valve and the semiluminar valves closed here, the ventricle has nowhere to go, and nevertheless, the ventricle continues to contract, causing the pressure in the chamber to increase rapidly, as you can see from B to C. So both the semiluminar and mitral valves are closed, the pressure in the ventricles increases all the way up to C. So once ventricular pressure exceeds the pressure in the aorta, the aortic valve opens. So the ventricular pressure is very high, causes the aortic valve to open, which is point C. Blood exits the left ventricular or ventricle, and that is where you have a decrease in left ventricular volume. However, due to its contraction, the pressure is still very, very high. So pressure continues to increase as the ventricle contracts, but ventricular volume decreases as blood is pushed out into the aorta, as you can see here. The end systolic volume, as you can see here, point D, is the minimum volume of blood the left ventricle contains during one cycle. So at this point, the ventricle has the least amount of blood that it has during one cycle. And at the end of each ventricular contraction, the ventricle then begins to relax. And relaxing is diastole. So basically this portion here, ventricular diastole, the ventricles completely relax, and as it does so, the ventricular pressure decreases. So both the volume and the pressure go down drastically. Once pressure in the ventricle falls below aortic pressure, the semiluminar valve closes and the ventricle becomes a sealed chamber. The remainder of relaxation occurs without a change in blood volume, and this is called isovolumic relaxation. Lastly, and most importantly, when ventricular pressure falls to the point at which the atrial pressure exceeds ventricular pressure, so basically here, is greater than the ventricular pressure, the mitral valve snaps open and the cycle begins again.